Welcome to another episode of the Autoblog podcast. I'm Greg Migliori, the editor-in-chief of Autoblog. Joining me today in studio here in Birmingham, Michigan, Associate Editor Joel Stocksdale. How's it going?
Not bad. Still dealing with a little bit of allergy left over, so if I sound a little stuffed up, that's why.
It's all right. Well, it's how it goes this time of year. Allergies are better than a cold or the flu or something like that. So, we'll get you healthy, and we got a great show for you. So we're going to talk about what we've been driving. We've both been behind the wheel of some big trucks. So I've been driving the Chevy Trail Boss, which is awesome. Pretty capable version of course, the Silverado. Joel just got out of the F-150 Raptor, which is another pretty enjoyable truck. We both spent some time in the Audi RS3, which is the 5-cylinder powered Audi, I would say, sporty sedan.
Yeah, it's their small sedan that they offer with the turbocharged 5-cylinder engine that you can also get in the TTRS. So it's the hottest version of the little bitty A3 sedan.
Well said, and it's a fun car. So we're going to tell you a little bit about what that was like. Hit on a few of the news of the week, which is some first looks at the heavy-duty trucks from General Motors. And Aston Martin is doing something pretty interesting with its electric strategy. More on that coming up. And lastly, we will spend your money. Kind of a spoiler alert, more trucks. So we hope you like trucks. This is the Autoblog podcast. Let's jump right in. So you just got out of the Raptor today. This week, you had a good time in this thing. It's the latest edition of the Raptor, which is just, such a capable truck, EcoBoost V6 power. What did you think?
I really enjoyed it. And what I was most surprised at was that it's actually really good on the street and on pavement. I mean, the Raptor is known for being able to just pound across sand and rocks and dirt and dunes and things at high speed, but it actually is really good on-road too. It's maybe, I'm thinking about this because I want to be sure when I say it, it may be the best handling full-size pickup truck I've driven. It doesn't lean too much, and it actually turns in fairly eagerly. I mean, granted, it's a full-size pickup, so it's no sports car by any means, but as far as big pickup trucks go, it's a solid handler. It's actually kind of fun to drive. It's got fairly quick steering too.
What did you think of the design? I think it's, I've always liked the look of the Raptor. It's my favorite F-150. I think that grille, those headlights, to me, it's by far the best looking F-150. I've kind of come around on the design a little bit. We've talked about this on the podcast, but to me, it's like the boldest F-150 out there, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question. It's definitely the boldest. I think it does look quite good. I like how they took the kind of beefed up broad shape of the old one, and they added a lot of little extra sculptural detail to it. There's a lot more depth to the front grille, the fender flares. They have a little bit more shape to them. The whole thing it has more detail to it, and it's a little bit more interesting to look at.
Cool.
I will say though, those wide fenders, they look awesome, but they do make it a little bit nerve-wracking every now and then in traffic. There's been a couple times I've been like, I don't know if I'm going to squeeze through here or not. It can be kind of close.
Yeah, this is quite the truck. It's, if you've ever thought of fancy doing Baja or something like that, this is your truck. Ford really, I mean, for a while there, especially right after the recession, they were alone in this sort of super truck space. This is before the Power Wagon really came back and the Rebel and some of these trucks. Of course, the Trail Boss is a relatively new thing for Chevy. And we also had the Sierra XT4, which
AT4.
is AT4, which is their off-road truck, off-road sort of truck, which we'll talk about the Trail Boss in just a little bit. But Ford really kind of held out its sort of shingle in this space for a while when the other car companies just were like, hey, that's a luxury that we don't need. But now that, the market is trucks, SUVs, crossovers, performance, I think the Raptor is more viable than ever.
And arguably, nobody has still quite matched the Raptor yet. I mean, it seems like the closest off-road trucks in all-around capability are the Colorado ZR2, which is a size smaller, and then also the Ram 2500 Power Wagon, which is a size bigger. And both of those aren't necessarily for like high speed off-roading. They're more for like lower speed technical stuff.
That's a really good point. I think Ford really is still, to use the cliche, they're in a class by themselves with this truck, because to get exactly what you get for this in this truck, you really can't get in the similar package from a competitor. So if you do want to sort of cross shop it, you've got to go up or down as far as the size, make some compromises. So that to me is why I think the Raptor is sort of like the perfect off-road truck, the perfect weapon for capability, but also for style. Other thoughts? We were talking about the V6 engine as we were walking over here. You were a little mixed on that?
Yeah, so I mean, the power is great and everything, but it doesn't sound very good. It does have some sort of exhaust on it to get it to make noise, but it's kind of this very sort of drony, a little bit buzzy kind of noise. And it's mostly exhaust noise. There's not a whole lot of intake noise, which I think would kind of help balance out some of the drony exhaust note. So that I'm kind of disappointed in. I almost kind of wish it had the 5-liter Ford V8, but the power is great. I have no problems with that. And as one last little minor note, something that I do kind of love about this are the auxiliary switches on the roof. I mean, they're not hooked up to anything on this because it's a bone stock truck, but they've got a really good feel. I wish they were hooked up to something because I love like playing with them. Feels like some sort of like aircraft or tank or some other kind of like really menacing means business kind of vehicle.
Sounds good. I will be driving that tonight, so I'm pretty stoked. I always like trucks that have those sort of overhead switches, trucks, Jeeps, things like that. That just, it's a little bit of a throwback, but it's very cool. It's very technical. Yeah, can't wait to drive it tonight. What I did just drive the other night was the 2019 Chevy Silverado. This is the four-wheel drive LT trim, but what you care the most about is it's the Trail Boss. I was pretty psyched to drive this. I'll just kind of start with the design. Straight up, when I saw the new Silverado revealed, even the Trail Boss was not really feeling it. I thought they did like way too much. It's way complex. The grille and the headlights, I think, just kind of looked weird. Those fenders, all those curves, it seemed like way too much for a full-size truck. But in real life, I think it looks way better. I was really impressed with the front end. The headlights in pictures, those don't do it justice. They're bigger. When they're on, it looks even cooler. The fenders are flared, but in real life, they're not as cartoonish as they look in the pictures. Like, frankly, this truck in pictures looks like a comic strip in some ways. But then when you see it on the road, it's just like, oh, that's a gutsy looking truck. So I would say the Trail Boss sort of maybe rethink a little bit how I feel about the new Silverado lineup. I feel like they definitely took a risk with the design. I was going to say they went a little too far, but just seeing it in real life, granted, this is a Trail Boss trim, bright red, black tires, blacked out grille. Yeah, it looks sweet. But it did sort of, I would say, shade my opinion on the design to a much better place. So, yeah.
Yeah, the new Silverado, when it came out, there was a lot to take in on it. And I'm still not 100% sure where I fall on like it or dislike it. I do think a big part of it depends on like what trim level you get and thus which grille you get. I think on the Trail Boss, it benefits greatly from having the all black grille and the black bumpers and other trim. It makes it look much more aggressive, but it also, like, the Silverado has a really huge nose to it. It's really tall, it's really flat, and when like the whole front end of it is bright chrome, it's just so much, and it looks so enormous and overwrought. I think having it all black really tones it down and makes it a little bit easier to digest.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And it's a bold move for them to like have a truck that's this dramatic. It's the most dramatic Silverado, I think, in a generation or two. I mean, really, it was always the Ram that was like almost the like lovingly kind of cartoonish, stance and design and silhouette. And then Ford was certainly very buttoned up. But yeah, it's it's quite the look. You're probably wondering, how does it drive? Well, it's good. I didn't take it off road, although I actually did briefly take it off road. It's very big. Like with, you mentioned the Raptor, it's a little hard to like see the corners of the fenders. Same sort of deal with the just these big flared fenders and the long hood. And I've driven a lot of trucks. Like I feel pretty confident, but I just took this corner and I like found like bloop, one wheel up on the curb, bloop, there goes the other wheel up on the curb, then kind of boop, 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 ran to the right. Next thing you know, I'm like, well, okay, I'm back on the road. Whoops. And I was also kind of glad I was in a truck. If I had just misjudged it and say, the RS3, that wouldn't have been good. But see, I went briefly off road. The suspension and springs were great for that 30 seconds, I guess, or more like 10 seconds. But the Trail Boss, of course, it's got the Z71 tuning. That'll, that's good if you want to go off road. I don't think most people would really need this trim. I think if you want this kind of capability, think about what you're going to use it for. This one has the EcoTech V8, which is certainly strong, 8-speed automatic. It's a smooth transmission. This is a pretty tried and true powertrain. The interior of the truck, I think, is better than before, but it's not like a huge dramatic departure. I think the GM infotainment system in this, the Chevy infotainment system it's solid. It's, I wouldn't say it's as good as Uconnect. It's probably about somewhere around the Sync 3 sort of setup. So it's usable, it's fine, but it's not perfect. But overall, I like driving a big truck. I certainly enjoyed driving this. This is, if you're looking for an off-road truck like this, you should, take this for a test drive. If you're in this market, do yourself a favor and try it. I might say, I could go either way on this. The AT4, the Sierra version, I think that it's more subtle. In some ways, I think it's cooler looking because it's not so over the top. But, this is pretty wild too. Obviously, it's certainly a very capable truck though.
Yeah, I think between the two, I might actually go Silverado because I think I do kind of like the over-the-topness. I think the Sierra might actually be a little too conservative for my taste. Now, you've got the sticker there for that. I was curious what the price is.
Yeah, I was just about to jump in with that. So we've got base price comes in at about $48,300 with this. We have the convenience pack, which is about another $1,700. All told out the door, we're at just over $57,000. So it's a pretty pricey Silverado.
That is. And what's interesting about that is that the Ford F-150 Raptor, it starts at about $53,000.
Ooh.
And I think between the two, I would have to go Raptor.
Easily. Yeah, because the Raptor just wins in every segment part. It's more capable. It's, got the powerful powertrain. What's that thing have? Like 450 horsepower? Is that right? The EcoBoost V6, I want to say.
That's
right.
It's 450 horsepower, 510 pound-feet of torque.
Yeah. So, I could see if you're, I'm sure the options on that add up pretty quick too. Like probably to get all the stuff you get on this, you're looking more like 65 for that. So that's not nothing, but again, this goes back to our earlier point. The Raptor does kind of stand alone. But this is a cool truck. I'm really glad we had it come through our fleet. Gives us a lot more to think about and consider when we kind of figure out where the new Sierra rates, just in the truck pecking order. So yeah, really cool. We've had a lot of the latest trucks come through here. We had the Ram, we had the Sierra, we had the Trail Boss, we have the Raptor right now. It's truck month here at Autoblog.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess what's the opposite of a huge truck? Let's go with a German small sports sedan, the Audi RS3. This is the 2018 model. It was also bright red. We've had a lot of red cars and trucks coming through here. This one started at, this is more than either of those trucks, $68,800. Brought up significantly by the $9,300 Prestige package, which actually I really liked. It adds like the glossy kind of blackout trim around the greenhouse. Lots of other cool stuff. This 5-spoke wheels. I don't think it's worth almost 10 grand, but it makes the car look pretty sweet. The spotlight thing here, though, is the 2.5 liter 5-cylinder engine, which is 400 horsepower, 354 foot-pound of torque, 7-speed S-tronic gearbox, and of course, it's got Quattro. So there's a lot of things going on here that you don't just get in your normal, like, sort of smallish sports sedan, even from a German marque like this. I like that Quattro is there for performance and that it was snowing the other night when I took it home. So that's cool. That 5-cylinder engine though it's really a smooth operator. I've driven it in the TTRS. I drove that on a track actually in somewhere in Spain. So that was cool. I guess it was good to drive that same engine here in Michigan. That's the only way I could tie that together. But it's a sporty car. Interior is pretty cool. Some of the, I'd say the hard plastics around the tops of the doors and the dash look a little cheap, but not egregious. Maybe for almost 70 grand, it's a little sketchy. But, it handles well. Steering's great. Brakes are super grabby. I would really like to take this thing on a track. I don't know. The 5-cylinder is really refined too. You get it to full throttle, you really mash the gas and, the car takes off, but it's not like this crazy uncouth sound. But it's a fun car. I'd say it's an acquired taste.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun with this car. That engine is just spectacular. And it sounds so good. And what I like about it is that it's a very natural sound. A lot of cars nowadays, they almost have all of the little cracks and pops and burbles and stuff down to a science. I mean, we had a Porsche 911 Carrera T that in the right exhaust mode, every single time you came off the throttle, you got 3 pops. Every single time, didn't matter the RPMs or anything. It always 3 pops. With this, it sounds it's like I said, it sounds natural. It's making noises at all kinds of different frequencies and RPMs, and it's always a little bit different every single time. And it's a very kind of raspy, snarly, angry exhaust note that, yeah, it's wonderful. And it's not overly loud either, which is impressive. It's quiet on the highway. And of course, 400 horsepower in a car that's, as small as, well, actually, I think maybe even smaller than a Honda Civic. That's a lot. That's a lot of power in a really small shell. It makes it really fun to hustle around. I do agree. The interior is not great, and that's a side effect of it being this not an RS3 form is the cheapest car pretty much in the Audi lineup. So, it's natural for it to be kind of cheap inside, and I know that when you're paying so much money for this car, you're buying it for the engine. I do wish they brought up the interior further, though.
I think it's, I would say this is if we ever go through a recession again, hopefully we don't, probably will. That's the way the economy works. Knock on wood, whatever you want to do. But I feel like this would be one of the first things that's on the chopping block, a small sports sedan with a monster engine in it. Come on, gas prices go up. This thing's the first thing that's getting thrown off the island. But while it's here, it's great. It's a classic sort of muscle car ethos, big engine. We're going to stuff it in this car and we're going to make it work. I thought the suspension was pretty well tuned. I mentioned the steering's pretty good. I tried it in the different driving modes. I didn't see a huge amount of difference. I don't know. Did you try any of them out?
Yeah, I had it in dynamic mode for the most part because that really opened up the exhaust. Mm-hmm. And so I just kind of left it there.
Yeah, dynamic mode is like steroids or ibuprofen or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the comfort mode, I think, does have softer suspension tuning, but I was willing to trade that off for the extra exhaust noise because it's still rode pretty decently in dynamic mode.
Yeah, the roads around here, time of year, they really start to get rough. And it was fine on the roads. I think to go back to the handling, it's a sweet, car on the road. I think it'd be fun to track this thing just because it seems really light on its feet, to use another cliche. This or an M2? What do you think?
I think I might go with this.
Ooh, yeah. I don't want to be a prisoner of the moment. I would normally say an M2, but I might say this now. But I'm going to step back and probably stick with the M2, even though I know M2 is a controversial car here in the halls of Autoblog. But I cut you off. What's your verdict?
So like I think I would go with the RS3 in a big part just because that engine is it's got so much character to it and it's so much fun to play with it. I really like the size of this car. I think it is, I mean, if it's not the same size as a 2 Series, it's got to be a little bit smaller. I mean, this is a little car.
Right.
And I like that about that. And I kind of like the all-wheel drive. I feel like I could just throw it into corners and be kind of sloppy and abusive with my racing line, and it's not gonna punish me for it. It's gonna help you out, and like it'll still reward driving smoothly, but it's not something that's gonna throw you under the bus when you screw up a corner.
Yeah, it's a small car. I do like the sedan layout though a lot. To me, that just gives this car better proportions of the M2, which I feel is a little cartoonish, to use apparently the word of this podcast. I put the stroller in the back, the trunk of it though, which is kind of stunning. I didn't think I was going to get it in there, and it did. I was able to get a rear-facing car seat in the back seat, which is even more stunning. I couldn't believe that I was able to do that, to be honest. I mean, you could do that in any car. The question is just how much of a compromise for comfort are you willing to make? You know, you make a big trade-off here, but it was doable. So I was surprised how practical this thing was. Really looks good. Those tires look great. Those are 20 inches, which really pop on a car this small. And I really think actually that Audi's sedan lineup probably has the right balance as far as its appearances. Like when you look at some of the crossovers, I had the Q5 a couple weekends ago, and I thought that was just a little bit overdone. Whereas I sort of feel like, you know, just the sedan lineup's just a little bit more well-tailored. Maybe Audi's been doing it longer, and they just have a better sense of that. I don't know. That was just my sort of curbside reaction, though.
Yeah. So now why would you go with M2 over RS3?
Great question. I would do that probably because I still sort of just like the ethos of the small BMWs, the way they steer, the way they handle. The propeller emblem still means something. Obviously, the 4 rings do too. It's a close call, like 60-40 M2 probably. But yeah, I kind of like the steering. I like the looks. I like the engine better in the RS3, which is a big check in its favor. But yeah, it's kind of more like an intangible reason why I would go with BMW over the Audi. So, did you do anything cool with the RS3? Impress your neighbors?
Not especially. I mean, I drove it around a fair bit. I think I got through a quarter tank of gas in one night.
Okay, well, that's fun.
And I did make sure to put it in a comfort mode when I pulled into my neighborhood. I didn't want to wake up anybody. Because it's a noisy little thing.
Yeah, it's yeah, we'll leave it there. It's definitely a fun car. It's the 4 rings still means something too. Let's put it that way. So in the RS badge, this is something that, you know, we've wanted to see more RSs here in the US. So props to Audi for doing that. But big news this week, Chevy rolled out its new heavy-duty trucks, some first looks at some of the front ends. You wrote both of the stories, actually. Take us through them.
Yeah, so the Silverado HD has been revealed. They haven't revealed much else except the way it looks on the outside, and it is a bold-looking vehicle. Even more bold than the Silverado, the 1500 version, which we were just talking about, was a pretty bold truck. And so this cranks things, well, I would say up to 11, but I mean, it's probably even beyond that. I'd say even like 13.
Yeah, really turning up the wick, turning up the amp, whatever cliche you want to use. I don't know. I think it kind of looks like a Decepticon or something, or a Transformer. That grill with that big bar going through the middle, and then you've got the fenders are almost like straight off a GMC or something. It's intense. It's intense.
Yeah, and the nose is just dominating. It's so tall. Actually, one of our other editors, Reese Counts, he got to see it in preview recently. And how tall would you say Reese is? Like
5'8",
yeah,
5'9", somewhere in there. Like ballpark it.
He was saying that like the top of the hood is like right by his chin, to give you an idea of like how tall this thing is.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a big truck.
So it towers off the ground, is what you're saying.
Yeah. And basically almost the whole front of it is just grill. That's there's not really any other way to put it. It's a lot of truck.
I kind of wonder, how if this is a bit much for like the heavy duty segment, because when you think about it, like this is really a segment where design does not matter. Like the interior design, a little bit, because it needs to be functional, especially if it's like maybe, like the owner of the business, you want to be able to offer up some options, things like that. We love the Power Wagon. That's a great truck, so there's some room to play around there. But man, this is a beastly truck. I guess what I'll do is go back to my Trail Boss analogy and say, hey, let me see it in real life. Maybe I'll like it more. But this is like, man, cartoonish. Take a drink. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm starting to warm up to it. And again, like the regular Silverado 1500, you're going to have a variety of grills to choose from. Today, they actually showed the Silverado HD High Country version, which it's got, like, that whole grill is filled with, like, silver slats, and it gets the bow tie badge back. The one that they showed initially had kind of a weird, I don't know if you'd call it, like, kind of brick-like front grill, and the bar just had a big, like, cutout Chevrolet word in the bar. I think I've seen some people say that like they prefer the High Country grill. I think I actually prefer I guess the version that they showed initially was a Z71, so I think I prefer the Z71 grill a little better. Partly because it doesn't have so much chrome, and I just feel like putting lots of chrome in something that's so big and massive as that grill just becomes overwhelming.
You're not a chrome man, I take it, are you?
Yeah, everything in moderation, especially chrome.
This looks like a train from like the 40s or 50s, like those big front ends that look like rams or something.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is like straight out of like mid-century locomotives or something. I don't even know what to do with this. That being said, I think I kind of like the High Country. I like the chrome. I mean, I don't know what to say. I just looking at the picture earlier today for the first time, because this is a pretty new story here. I was like, oh, all right, I can see what they're doing here. And I think, to me, that makes more sense, because if you want the High Country, you're going to want this. Whereas, I don't know if you're like, I'd say like Z71 buyer necessarily wants the other look, I guess, let's put it that way. But we'll see, man. I think the truck overall, the rest of it looks fairly well proportioned and, in good taste. But I will say this, like, you can't like get mad at Chevy for taking risks. I mean, I guess you can.
Yeah, you can totally get
You
mad.
can totally get mad at them. But I will say this, we're always saying things like, they don't take risks. They're being conservative. And it's not just Chevy, it's Ford, it's other brands. Then when they do, well, what do? We tee off on them and say, well, it looks ugly. So, you can't have it all those ways. But I don't know.
And I do,
High Country?
I do totally appreciate that they are trying. Because like you said, there are a lot of companies that play it safe way too much of the time. Something else I do want to mention about these trucks is that, and I'm still not entirely sure what the like end game plan is here, but apparently the only part of the body of this new Silverado HD that's shared with the regular Silverado 1500 is the roof. All the rest of the sheet metal is unique to the HD, which seems a little bit counterproductive to me. I mean, I think a lot of heavy duty buyers, they're going to be using these trucks like as trucks.
Right.
Especially like for commercial and fleet use. And not sharing body components seems expensive to me, both for like selling the truck initially and then for paying for replacement parts.
I agree. I don't totally understand the business model on that, other than it is a very lucrative segment. So I could see them thinking, well, hey, we'll pay a little bit more on the front end and maybe we'll capture some new buyers. I don't know. I think that's a very unique play on their part. We'll see if it pays off. Obviously, they see a huge amount of opportunity in this segment, which to me, this is It's not totally insulated, like swings in the economy, if the home building market takes a dive or like construction industry, other things. Obviously, these trucks, because they're like bulletproof, they run forever. Contractors stop buying the new ones. But apparently they think with more of a stronger design play, maybe they could go out and capture some more customers. Otherwise, I don't know. It does seem a little needlessly complex to, make a whole new design out of whole cloth like that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I totally get wanting to have some visual distinction and also sort of a way for buyers to be like, oh yeah, I've got the biggest, toughest Silverado.
Right.
I get that, but I can also see where you might want to still maintain some commonality between all of your trucks just to keep costs down. Because, I mean, you could probably get away with just a new nose and then keep like the cab and the bed.
Right. Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you on that one. But let's do a little more dramatic change here. What's the opposite of a big truck? How about an Aston Martin EV? Some news out of Aston this week. Pretty interesting approach here. They can essentially like retrofit some cars, but also completely undo it. And this is kind of a cool situation. You had the story as well. I like your subhead here. It's all completely reversible. What does that mean?
Yeah, so Aston Martin announced that they are developing an electric motor assembly that basically the goal is to make it so that you can just bolt it into any old classic Aston Martin without having to do any kind of major surgery or changes to the car. Basically, the goal is that it'll bolt up to the existing engine mounts, to the existing transmission, and be able to run on electricity. And then if for whatever reason, I don't know, you're taking it to Goodwood Festival of Speed or something like that, and you want to show off the old straight six or V12 or whatever engine was in it initially, you can go back to that. So you can have kind of the best of both worlds. You can have a classic car that you don't have to use gas. And Aston Martin mentions that hopefully this will mean that you can still drive your classic in the future when like you might not be able to drive gas cars in cities and things, stuff like that. So basically just kind of a way to kind of keep their classic cars like forever on the road.
It's a great move, I think. Aston Martin in general, I think, is really embracing electrification. They've basically said, hey, you could do downsizing, smaller displacements, but that's not who we are. Like a Turbo 4 in an Aston, it's not a great thing. It's not really what you expect. It's not what their customers want. So the fact that they're kind of using this like throwback tactic is cool. Love that they showed it off in a 1970 DB6 Volante. That's a good looking car. Timeless design. That's a 1970, but that's a look that they carried that look for quite some time. And it's cool. We'll see. I think the other thing too about Aston Martin is not only do they have this like full, like, obviously modern product portfolio, but they also have this like base of loyalists and fans and like this great like catalog, this history. So I think it's a great way to keep all of that functional, living, breathing. These aren't museum pieces. Aston's like, go drive them, and I think that's a fun thing. That's, why we're enthusiasts. I'm not sure if I would do this. It would depend on what state my car was in before I did this. If it was like maybe, I don't know, a beater classic car, sure, might give it a shot. And then you kind of get into the complexity of how hard is this to do. Yes, it's reversible, but I don't know if they said how much time it takes. There's some wrinkles here.
Yeah, and they're still working on this. They said that they plan to start doing their first like customer conversions toward the end of 2019. So it'll be a while before customers can actually do this. They're still working out some of the kinks and things. I think though they figure if you have the money for a classic Aston Martin and you have the money to do this in the first place, probably have enough money that you could go back and forth as you wish. And I mean, of course, I'm sure that they would probably have some customers that just go to the electric powertrain and never switch back. Because they've decided that, oh, hey, I like driving around in my convertible Aston Martin in just the quiet of nature and just going for a nice cruise.
It's, yeah, I mean, it's definitely, if you have to ask the price, you probably can't afford it. So I think it falls into that category. So speaking of spending some money, should we spend some money?
Yeah, sure.
All right. So this is a long-time listener. We appreciate that. Let's see, we've got Thomas, we'll say, is writing into us. Thanks for writing, Tom. Appreciate it. Says that notices that we've skipped Spend My Money a few times. Hey, appreciate that. Glad you're listening and glad for your calling us out on that. It's actually our favorite segment, but we try to do it when we at least have some idea of what we're talking about here. So essentially, Thomas wants a truck. Nice lengthy email here. Essentially, it needs to be like a commuter truck. See, the budget is $45,000 out the door. Needs it to be able to hold some kids. Reliability, uses it for projects. Longevity. So all the things that you consider when buying a truck. Native Michigander. So he's looking for probably a domestic is what basically he's leaning towards here. So here's the lineup, which is basically all of the domestic trucks. F-150 Silverado, Colorado Sierra, Canyon, Ram, could wait for the Ranger, but not exactly sure if he could wait that long. And again, $45,000 is the price range.
Yeah, so I'm glad that you're open to a mid-sized truck, because one of the first things that came to mind, especially if you're looking for fuel economy and also being able to like tow and stuff, I think a Canyon or Colorado diesel would be a really good choice. Those do have the top towing capacity in the segment right now for mid-sized trucks, and the diesel actually gets solid fuel economy. And I mean,
good choice.
Yeah, and the mid-sized trucks aren't super small anymore. I mean, they've gotten a lot bigger.
They're as big as they were like a generation ago for the full sizers.
Mm-hmm.
So these are pretty big trucks.
Yeah, and they also offer a lot of variety in bed length and cab choice. I mean, you can put a long bed on the quad cab, which is pretty impressive. So I mean, you can have a lot of bed space and also a roomy cabin. And yeah, double checking fuel economy. With the diesel, you can get high 20 mpg, even hit 30 mpg if you go with a two-wheel drive with the diesel in one of the Colorados or Canyons, which that's really good in a pickup truck.
I think that's an excellent choice. If I were thinking for personal use for myself, I don't know, I like trucks. I mean, I'll drive a mid-sized one and think, this is all I need. I like this. Drive, full-size one and think, well, no, this is what I really want. Then I'll drive like a Power Wagon. I'm like, oh, this is fine. I could totally drive, the 2500. It's good too. Where I would fall on this though is I would go with a Ram. Basically what I would do is get on the Ram website, spec one out to $4,500 and go home and you will not regret it. It looks like there's a deal on the 2018 Ram. It looks like it's at least in the Detroit area, I think, which could benefit you. For the Bighorn crew cab, it's a 4x4 with the, let's see. Yeah, so that's actually a pretty good deal. It's coming in at about $44,000. Offer expires around the new year. So, hey, there you go. I think that kind of fits what you're looking for. Check that. I might have a different area code in my cookies or whatever, if you will. But I would assume there's a comparable one like that in your area. So yeah, I would go with the Ram. I would just figure out what size do you want, how many options do you want to layer on and off, sort of move some of the pieces around, and then get to 4,500, stop there, and you will be happy. I think it's the best truck on the market. It's a lot of fun to drive. That's where I would go. That's ultimately how I would spend my money.
Yeah, I think Ram is always a good choice. It's got it probably drives the best all around compared with it's got the right blend of handling and ride quality. It's also got pretty much the best interior in the business, and Uconnect is a great infotainment system. If you get it with the V6, it gets decent gas mileage, 25 on the highway, 20 in the city, which is obviously not as good as like a Colorado or Canyon diesel, but it's also a bigger truck. I might also throw out there, I was really pretty fond of the F-150 we had recently with the 2.7 liter turbo V6.
was a good engine.
Yeah,
it was a nice truck too.
Yeah, and it actually gets similar gas mileage to the V6 Ram, but with more power and torque. If you can wait a little bit, though, you may want to see what the upcoming F-150 diesel is like, and maybe even the Jeep Gladiator diesel when it comes out.
Of course, yeah.
That one's a little bit further out, since I think it's going to be about 2 years before the diesel engine shows up in that. But you may want to hold off and just wait and see what some of these new diesels are like, because they offer a lot of capability and fuel economy at the same time. The F-150 diesel will probably be the soonest.
Yeah, that's a great observation. The Gladiator, you just might want to check out. It's a cool truck. You might, if you've seen the pictures, you might just say, hey, that's what you're thinking, and that's certainly cool. We think that one's going to be pretty expensive. They have not confirmed pricing, but we know think like Wrangler Rubicon territory. It's a very capable truck. So that may not be exactly what you're looking for, because it is in some ways like the way they've slotted it is it's like an off-road kind of Rubicon sort of thing. There's not really a truly softer version of that truck as I understand it. I'm sure they'll expand the lineup, but they're definitely launching with, a very capable lineup. And the Ranger, I haven't driven it. I haven't driven the Gladiator either, but I know it's a cool looking truck. The Ranger, we will be driving that in the next couple of weeks. So maybe write us back if you want our opinion on that. But, again, I've seen the Ranger, I still think the Ram is the way to go. And I think your diesel portfolio is definitely a lot of good options. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think probably Ram or Canyon, Colorado. Figure out which size you prefer and how much you want the gas mileage and go from there probably.
That's a really good way to sum it up. And we'll leave it right there. We're out of time on this episode of the Autoblog podcast. Thanks for listening. If you enjoy the Autoblog podcast, please rate us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. iTunes, I don't think exists anymore, so it would probably be the podcast app on your phone, Stitcher, any of those great things. Please hit us up on Twitter. Keep sending us notes. We love spending your money. But hey, it's been a fun show. Thanks for being with me, Joel. It's been a great show. We'll see you next time. Be safe out there.